a more dynamic pose than both equal. So that's something to add to your list. Yeah, so those are on the checklist. When you're shooting this pose, cropping. If you've noticed, now I've cropped in tighter because I liked triangle, triangle, triangle. It's got a lot of nice negative space and it's flattering to her. What you want to watch out for cropping is you don't, I'm going to have you do that same pose. You don't want to crop here usually because it's just like an awkward, your eye wants to continue because you're so close to the feet, you can almost see it, but you can't, so you feel like she got chopped off. I recommend if you're shooting this pose, either include the feet or crop just above the knees. Just below tends to be less visually pleasing, but just above looks good. So that would be how I'd shoot this. So I'm going to move on to the next one to make sure we get to all these. Next one for woman standing. This one, just super essential, and I call this my Facebook pose, because when anybody poses with me for Facebook, like a photo for Facebook, this is what I do. Okay? You can totally all call me out on it. I don't even mind. So for this one, in this particular shot, I'm going to show you a couple varieties of it, but basically it's one foot in front of the other, and either hip back to put the waist back, and then you can vary all of this again. Like all of that can be varied. The key here is the legs. What doesn't work is, can you uncross them a little bit? Yeah, now pop your knee out a little. Okay, this doesn't work as much because what I had her do is just kind of stand there and just kind of do this, okay? But when I just kind of knee out, what happens is her legs are about equal with her waist, which are about equal with her shoulder, and it's just a line. It's just so straight up and down. And so we're missing that whole thing of curves that we want to have with women. So now what I'm going to have her do is cross one leg in front of the other, and you kind of kick your hips back. Good. So let's take a look at the difference. Now when I crop, perfect. Can you put that hand up to your neck? Good. And then just elbow down a little. Perfect. Good. And can you put that out just a little more? Yeah. Good. Okay. So for this image, what it does is it makes your eye do this, right? Like you have to follow her curves because since she kicked her hips back and she has a small waist, but we put her hand on her waist, which draws attention to the small waist, versus right on her hip. I see a lot of people say put your hand on her hip. If your subject does this, generally that's not a good idea because it's actually drawing attention to the widest part of their body. The time when that's really okay, this goes into my posing class, we talked about body types. Let's say a woman has a very large top and then no hips. In that case, it's actually okay to put hands on the hips because you're trying to balance it out. You're trying to draw a little bit more attention here and give you a curve versus just large on the top and then straight on the bottom. But most of the time, it's actually hands on the waist that looks a little bit better because you're saying, look at how small my waist is. Like that's what you're drawing attention to. And she kicks her hips back. It gives her a little bit more of this waist because you're kind of bending at the waist a little more. And then the way that her feet are one in front of the other, it gives you a leading out point. I like this pose better usually as a cropped photo. So while we're talking about that, as you're going ahead and you're taking all your photos, watch your crop. So I'm going to have you do that same pose. Where you want to crop is at or near a narrowing point. So for example, you probably don't want to crop just at the shoulders, like just at the top of the shoulders, because someone's going to be their widest. And you probably don't want to crop just at the hips. And you probably don't want to crop even mid-thigh, depending on how they're posed. And that's why I have her put her leg over. She could cross them like this, or she can do this. She can cross her knee in, and I crop there, because then it gives me that swoof at the bottom. So I'm going to show you some good and bad places to crop. Like I wouldn't crop right here. Like I wouldn't crop quite right there because it's going to make her look fuller here even though she's not. And especially since I had her kick her hip out, I was trying to give more curve, but it's going to make her look wider unless I show that her hip was kicked out, and that's just not how wide she is. So instead, that same thing looks better a little lower here, or even just like a little higher. Can you lower your left arm a little bit? Good. And let's put that arm across to the other hand. And bring them up this time. Maybe something like right there. Like this, that'd work. Back up. Good. So I'm like trying to not crop at hips, not crop at shoulders. Something like that's fine as well. Like closer to the knee gives you more of a vanishing point. So the key with this is however the person's standing, have them put their weight on their back hip and make sure their legs are either crossed or I tuck this foot in. So can you do one like that? Just tuck, or whatever knee. And just tuck it like all the way over so you're comfortable. Good. And so now let's put hand on your hips and let's put that one lower. So I'm trying to give myself a little bit more shape and pop that elbow out. Oh, the reason I keep telling her to pop her elbow out, can you put it back? Can you go like this? Foreshortening. When I take this photo and cross that knee over again. Good. When I take this photo and now pop it towards me. Good. When she has her arm back, it does the same thing as elbow forward. You've got that foreshortening going on. So she looks like she has a littler arm, like they don't look even. And something else that I sometimes will watch out for is sometimes these hands will look like they're coming out of nowhere. So I'll have my subject even rotate their hands forward just a little bit so I can actually see them.